Hello, welcome to this. Thank you for watching, thank you for listening, thank you for subscribing. This video, maybe my 22nd attempt, I don't know. And you'll see that I'm slightly out of balance because, of course, this ridiculous gimbal which I've got doesn't work. So, if you're with me, thank you very much. If you're on Instagram, I've only just started posting to there. I don't know what the equivalent is of the like button, but press it, that'd be important. And if you're on YouTube, like, subscribe, do all those things. And of course, the podcast Egg Chasers and Ruby Dungeon, which will be returning this week, if my guest can make the time slot he said he could. And believe you me, it's like herding cats. So we'll wait and see. Anyway, I was lucky enough to attend the Leicester Tigers Zoom today, which was awesome. They had Jack Van Borthwick talking, they had Elliot Snaven talking, but let's not beat around the bush. I wasn't particularly interested in any of that. All I wanted to do is listen to Steve Borthwick. Now, at this point, you will know that I am a big fan of Steve Borthwick, and I genuinely think he is a top 3 director of rugby in the competition. He might even be the number 1 director of rugby for me in terms of how he describes the game. There are others out there who I think are absolutely brilliant. Sanderson would be one. Of course, Rob Baxter, if you've heard my interview with him, the way that he talks about the game, it's just very simple, very clear messages. And I love it because what Borthwick manages to do even when he's talking to the press, think about this. We watch him for maybe an hour a week, and he gives us the most clarity of any director of rugby as to what he wants to achieve with his squad. But overlaid with that, there are these nuggets of detail, which I think are fascinating. And the secret to all of this, I think, is to manage to package up that very complex thing, which they've found out, that nerdy bit of data, and make it into a very, very succinct and simple message. And that's what he does with us. So God knows what he's like with his team. And if it's even half as effective, I can see it being an incredible boost to those players, because ultimately, what do players want? They want simplicity and they want to know what is expected of them. And I think Steve Borthwick does a very, very good job of that. So to give you an example of the sort of detail which he was talking about, it was mentioned that Leicester Tigers had reduced their penalty count. I can't remember the exact question. All I remember is the actual answer. And Borthwick said something along the lines of, when you get a penalty in the middle of the field, it's basically a compounding effect, because the opposition teams now statistically are more likely to go for the corner. And once they're in the corner, that one penalty will turn into 3 penalties or 4 penalties because you're under pressure. And of course, he's absolutely right, isn't he? Because teams do go to the corner, and the reason it goes to the corner is the sustained pressure. So in his mind, if he stops the penalties in midfield, that's where the discipline is key, well then it doesn't compound into the corner, and therefore your penalty count comes right down. And it's just such a simple way of looking at the game. But again, it's that complex bit of information made very, very simple. He can do it for the press. No doubt he can do it for his players too. And in past press conferences, I've spoken about the message that he gives us, which is breakdown, defence, set piece. And he was asked it again today because people are asking, why is it the Leicester Tigers are playing such good rugby? Are they advancing what they're doing now to get Nemanja Nadolo involved, or George Ford involved, or Harry Potter using his feet, all that sort of stuff? But the answer is dead simple. They're able to do that because they are focused on the basics. And instead of talking about, we need to expand that game with more George Ford and more Nemanja Nadolo, Borthwick went right back to what he'd been saying for ages, which is we need to get even better at the basics now. He even referenced Harlequins when he said, look, everyone is talking about Harlequins' fantastic attack, and it is good. But when he's watching him, he's looking at their dominant scrum. And again, he's absolutely right. Just to think a little bit more about Harlequins there, you talk about the breakdown. They were one of the best teams out of the breakdown. Will Evans, halfway through the season, had more turnovers than anyone else. So there is definitely a point there. There was also a little bit of chat which I quite enjoyed around Bristol Bears. The question was something along the lines of Bristol are in the middle of the 5-year plan. How long do you need? What is your plan? To which he said, how long are they through that plan? Now, this is just me thinking off the top of my head now, but these 5-year plans I've always thought are an absolute joke. I remember Dean Ryan had one for Worcester, and he left in year 3 of his 5-year plan. And if you've got a 5-year plan, I don't know what you tell your boss at the start of it, but presumably you must have to hit that target. So if the 5-year plan for Bristol is to spend as much money as possible and then get to a scenario where they've won the European Cup or the Premiership, well, I think they must be on year 4. Anyway, they've got 7 more years of this, so best of luck. I'm sure they'll do something, but it's just an interesting point that the 5-year plan idea for Borthwick just does not fly. He, as I would suggest, is a good idea. says it's about every game and at the end of every season. It's not a 5-year thing. Another thing linked to Bristol, and it's only linked to Bristol, it isn't about Bristol, but he mentioned the money situation. And I think this has been niggling away at him at some time now. And there is certainly a competitive discrepancy between the league, and it's all based around the changes of the COVID-based salary cap. So when COVID first hit, they reduced the salary cap. I say the Premiership reduced their salary cap by 25%. They also got rid of one marquee player, leaving only one remaining. So that means if you had two marquee players on a long-term contract, then those two marquee players could be grandfathered in for this year. There is also a way to do your contracts. So if you had a big contract, in the new salary cap, not all of that money gets counted towards your cap. So for instance, if it was a £400,000 contract on a long-term basis, and that player decided not to redo his contract, well then £100,000 of that would not go on the salary cap. The reason this is important is because teams trying to build right now are at a distinct disadvantage compared to teams that have already got their squad in place from pre-COVID. Sale, for instance, have a very settled squad. There's a good chance that they have two marquee players. There's a good chance that Bristol have two marquee players. But if you only had one marquee player, or one of the others had run out of contract, well, you can't replace that guy. So eventually it will even itself out. But at the moment, Borthwick is exactly right. There is a discrepancy between how all of the squads are built. And even if you had the money, it looks like you can't spend it because of the grandfathered in contracts and the reduction in the cap. So yeah, it's quite an interesting point, that, and I don't think anything can be done to resolve it. I just think, you know, if you're unlucky, you're unlucky, and we're gonna have to wait for all of this to unwind itself. The last thing which I felt was interesting, and maybe not as positive as it could be, is the fact that Borthwick again referenced how hard Leicester Tigers are working. And this is something which has been banded around a little bit in circles that I speak with. It is getting rather intenser. And I'd be interested to know if when he says they're working very hard, is that a relative term? Because I've been to rugby clubs and they all work relatively hard. Sorry, and they all work really hard. So hard being a relative term, I'd like to see exactly, you know, what does that mean? Now, it doesn't mean they're smashing into each other, but it means there's a set of standards which are expected, and those standards are maintained, whether they're discussing the game or, you know, they're looking at whiteboards or whatever the thing is, you know, it is high standards. And I wonder if the downside of that is, do you have to tone it down sometimes? Do you need to be wary of how much you're working the lads? Or indeed, are you doing something which is like a filtering process, that if you can't keep up with this hard work or this intensity, well, Leicester Tigers isn't really the team for you? I suggest it's the latter, because Borthwick actually said, and this is an example of the brutal honesty of the man, Leicester Tigers were, for a couple of years, were missing. I mean, that is a damning indictment of the people who were there before, the players that were there before, the effort which was been put in, and I'm sure they thought they were putting in one hell of a lot of effort. But I guess it's this honest approach which will make everyone reflect on what they were really doing. So yeah, that was everything which he was talking about in the presser. One other thing which wasn't really spoke about, but it was sort of mentioned, is of course this week they've got Saracens, and Saracens, I'm not sure they are a top 4 team still. I thought the win against Bristol was magnificent, but then look what happened to Bristol against Wasps. Borthwick seems to think they're a top 1 or 2 team in the league. I don't agree with them at all. But they play Leicester Tigers this weekend. Now, obviously Mark McCall's still in place, as he should be, a marvellous director of rugby. But from that tree, from that lineage, if you like, you've got Wigglesworth at Tigers, you've got Borthwick at Tigers, obviously you've got Alex Sanderson at Sale, you had Gustard for a little while. It's starting to look like an old school NFL coaching tree. And it also reminds me, ironically, of what happened at Leicester Tigers when they were good. Look how many people went elsewhere. In fact, look how many people are still coaching from the old Leicester Tigers teams now. Sam Vesti's doing a great job at Northampton. You've got Dean Richards. You've even got John Wells, who I think is still up in Newcastle. And ultimately, it ended up with Martin Johnson taking over at England. But the less we say about that, the better. Just looking ahead to next week's games, I'm quite excited about the Bristol Bath game. Never have I Never have I seen a game so early on in the season, which means so much to two teams. I don't know where Stuart Hooper goes after 3 losses. People are already making excuses for his injury list. I don't think that's good enough. You build a squad for a reason. And also, it's going to be pretty desperate if Bristol lose 3 on the bounce too. Now, I think Bristol are the clear favourites for this, and they don't need to worry. But of course, because there's so many good teams at the bottom of the table now, there's going to be someone who is going to be rather disappointed come the end of the season. And I hope it's not Bristol. We'll just need to wait and see. England squad. Apparently, Ollie Lawrence has been let go because he's ill, not COVID related. Apparently, that's very important because if it was COVID related, presumably we'd have to throw him in a wood chipper. And also, Ben Youngs has dropped out of the squad because he was injured in Tigers' game on the weekend against Gloucester. Good news though, Rafi Quirk, who did not feature in the London Irish game, has been retained. So that is very good news, both on an injury point of view and also from an experience point of view for him. Tomorrow there will be some more press conferences. I'll listen in, see what I can find out, see what nuggets of information the DORs give me. And as soon as I know, I will let you know. So until then, thank you for watching, thank you for listening, thank you for subscribing. Hope you enjoy these videos. Leave a comment, leave a message, press the like button, you know what to do. All right, bye-bye.